Half the NFL is panicking right now. Quarterbacks are dropping, fan bases are rioting on Twitter, and coaches are blowing up Cleveland's phone like teenagers during a Black Friday PlayStation drop. And right in the middle of this storm, the one name every single desperate franchise keeps circling is Shedeur Sanders. But here's the cruel joke. Cleveland has him. They know what they've got. And instead of unleashing him, they're treating him like a museum piece. Polished, hidden away, untouched while the league loses its mind. The setup: a league gone mad. Panic is everywhere. The Bengals just watched Joe Burrow limp down with injuries again, and suddenly they're dialing Cleveland like an ex who swore they moved on but can't let go. In Miami, patience with Tua evaporated the moment he started tossing interceptions like party favors. And Dolphins fans are spamming trade for Sanders hashtags like a digital protest. The Rams are watching Matthew Stafford's body creak and groan like it's under a ticking clock, and they've already started poking around like shady garage buyers. And the Colts? They drafted Anthony Richardson like a science experiment. But right now he looks more question mark than franchise cornerstone. In other words, these aren't casual nibbles. Teams aren't kicking tires. They're slamming offers on the table. They want Shedeur Sanders yesterday. The auction nobody can win. And for once, the Cleveland Browns, a franchise famous for fumbling away their hopes, are sitting smug. Phones are blowing up. Scouts are circling. Coaches are whispering back-channel offers. And the Browns just sit back with folded arms and a cold smirk. No, not today, not tomorrow, not until pigs sprout wings and Bill Belichick shows up wearing a crop top on the sidelines. They're not even trying to play nice about it. It's like that stubborn friend who refuses to cash in a winning lottery ticket because they like the way it looks, pinned to the fridge. To other teams, Sanders is the golden ticket. To Cleveland, he's leverage, hope, and the ultimate "you can't have this" move. The irony: Sanders isn't even playing. But here's where it goes from dramatic to downright ridiculous. While all this chaos swirls, Shedeur Sanders isn't even suiting up. He's not second string, he's not running scout. He's basically Cleveland's best-kept secret, parked as a third-string afterthought. Ahead of him, Joe Flacco, 40 years old, a walking relic who should be cashing AARP discounts instead of NFL checks. Beside him, Dillon Gabriel, whose most memorable highlight so far is existing. Meanwhile, Sanders, the guy half the league is begging for, is standing there like the most expensive practice mannequin in football. A Ferrari locked in a garage, while the rest of the neighborhood is stuck driving busted minivans. The Browns finally hold the cards. Make no mistake, Cleveland knows exactly what they stumbled into. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't 4D chess. This was dumb luck. A fifth-round pick, number 144 overall. The kind of garage sale flyer you grab just to fill camp depth. And yet, while entire war rooms spaced out, while fan bases wondered how their GM skipped the name flashing on the board, Cleveland ended up with Deion Sanders' son, an NFL-ready, ratings magnet quarterback who has that electric mix of pedigree, performance, and personality. Now, they're clutching him with both hands. And the irony is blinding. This is the same franchise that once convinced itself Brandon Weeden was the future, that Johnny Manziel's chaos was marketable, that Colt McCoy could survive behind Swiss cheese lines. The Browns, eternal punchline of the league, suddenly find themselves as the gatekeepers of hope. What the intro needs you to feel: Sanders isn't just sitting on the bench. His value is exploding every single week he doesn't play. Trade rumors amplify. Analysts are screaming. Front offices are quietly panicking. It's like buying a dirt-cheap stock and suddenly realizing the entire market wants in. Will Cleveland cash out? Will they unleash him? Or will they watch the storm grow until November's trade deadline forces them into a decision that flips the entire NFL upside down? And that's what makes this story impossible to ignore. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just another quarterback prospect. He's a movement in shoulder pads. Jackson State flipped once he showed up. Colorado flipped once he showed up. And now Cleveland? Without him even taking a snap, the league is already orbiting around his name. The Browns are sitting on the NFL's lottery ticket, and whether they ever scratch it or spin it to the highest bidder is the kind of drama that ignites a season. If you want to understand just how strange the Shedeur Sanders situation really is, you have to start with one uncomfortable truth. The Cleveland Browns have no idea what they're doing. On one hand, they lucked into drafting the son of Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback with the rare combination of buzz, leadership, and performance potential. On the other, they're acting like he's nothing more than a name stuck on the depth chart. And that's where the bizarre standoff begins. Drafted like a bargain, guarded like a treasure. Let's rewind. Shedeur Sanders wasn't a first-round prize. He wasn't a can't-miss lottery pick. He slid all the way to number 144, a fifth-round selection that felt more like a garage sale pickup than a masterstroke. Cleveland didn't outmaneuver anyone. They simply caught him when the rest of the league fell asleep. And at the time, most fans didn't even blink. Another developmental QB shuffled quietly into a quarterback room. Except here's the twist. Instead of fading into obscurity, his value exploded almost instantly. Within weeks of showing up in Cleveland, reporters started whispering. Analysts began calling him a steal. Off the field, Shedeur handled himself like a leader. On the scout team, he carried himself like a starter. Suddenly, that throwaway, fifth-round pick started looking like the rare kind of find that could rewire a franchise. And Cleveland? They clamped down. Suddenly, what was once a gamble pick became untouchable. The QB room of irony? Here's where it gets funny. While Shedeur sits frozen in time, gathering dust like a Ferrari parked in a garage, the rest of Cleveland's quarterback depth chart looks like a museum collection of question marks and nostalgia pieces. Joe Flacco is 40 years old. He's an NFL relic. He's been trotted out so many times in break glass in case of emergency roles that at this point, he should come with a glass case of his own. Fans respect his past, sure, but if we're being real, Joe is a placeholder, not a future. Dillon Gabriel, he's not ready for the pressure cooker of this league. His performances so far feel closer to preseason filler than anything resembling a franchise quarterback. And between those two sat Shedeur Sanders, the one guy in that room with the combination of upside, charisma, and proved leadership track record that screams future starter. Yet somehow, he's locked third on the chart, wearing sweatpants on game days while Cleveland congratulates themselves for keeping him hidden. If you scripted this in a sports movie, critics would call it too unrealistic, hoarded like a lottery ticket. You'd think Cleveland drafted him just to flip him for profit. And maybe, in some ways, that's exactly the vibe coming out of the Browns front office. Other teams keep calling. They're dangling offers. They're probing. They're even begging. And the Browns just keep saying no. Not even politely. Not even a, we'll think about it. Just flat no. It's as if Cleveland believes showing even a crack of interest would spark a feeding frenzy they couldn't contain. So instead, they hold him tightly. Not because they're using him, but because they just like knowing everyone else can't. It's stubborn, it's smug, and it's the kind of move that's got Browns fans tearing their hair out in frustration. The standoff nobody asked for. This is the current state of things. Half the NFL is circling like sharks, desperate for a shot at Sanders. The Browns refuse to play him, refuse to trade him, and refuse to even develop him meaningfully. And through it all, Sanders remains the calm eye of the storm, showing leadership, showing poise, showing maturity far. That's why this is so bizarre. Normally, when a team hoards untapped talent, it's because they're ready to unleash it. For Cleveland, it feels like the opposite. They're hoarding him just to not use him. It's like buying stock before it takes off, then refusing to sell or spend a dime while bragging about how valuable it is to sit on in the dark. If you thought Cleveland's weird standoff was just a local drama, think again. This thing has gone full-scale league chaos. It feels like half the NFL front offices are hovering over their phones, crafting proposals and whispering in back-channel conversations about one name, Shedeur Sanders. And it's no secret why. Quarterbacks are dropping, others are underperforming, and franchises that spent years chasing their guy now realize they may have whiffed yet again. That's where Sanders becomes the shiny object, the fix-all, the miracle lottery ticket. And one by one, these teams have lined up, hat in hand. The desperate Bengals. It starts in Cincinnati. Every time Joe Burrow limps off the field, the entire fan base goes silent. He's elite, no doubt, but he's also been beat up and broken down over the past few seasons. And when he's unavailable, the Bengals go from feared contender to forgettable middle-of-the-pack team. That's why insiders say the Bengals have already probed Cleveland. The thought of keeping Sanders in state, developing him behind Burrow, and maybe, just maybe, winning the luxury backup lottery is too tempting for them. To put it bluntly, Cincinnati is scared of life without Burrow. Shedeur is their insurance policy, and they want it badly. Miami's meltdown. Then there's Miami, 1 week into the season, and already the patience with Tua is thinner than Miami Beach sunscreen. Fans are blunt about it. They're sick of watching interceptions that look like Hail Marys gone wrong. Social media is flooded with hashtags and calls for Sanders. The Dolphins might not say it publicly, but privately, they'd take him in a second. They know he'd bring buzz, younger energy, and a fresh spotlight, exactly what a franchise desperate for attention and stability craves. The Rams and the Stafford clock. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Matthew Stafford's back is practically a medical drama in itself. Every tackle feels like watching Jenga blocks wobble. The Rams know time is running out. They either find the heir apparent or risk plunging back into irrelevance the second Stafford goes down for good. And Shedeur Sanders, he's not just potential on the field, he's Hollywood ready. The swagger, the name recognition, the ratings draw. These aren't just hypotheticals. LA is sniffing around because Sanders is marketable, dynamic, and maybe the bridge from Stafford's last throws to the future. Colts playing mad scientist. And then we have the Colts. There's plenty of reason to believe more are sniffing around, because quarterback desperation is the NFL's most contagious disease. But through all of this, Cleveland doesn't flinch. They're like the smug auctioneer who keeps waving off offers and shouting, "Sold," to nobody, while the crowd loses its mind. Why the frenzy is growing? Here's the simple truth. Sanders brings more than just an arm. He brings buzz. He brings prime dynasty pedigree. He brings hope that feels bigger than a box score. Every team listed above isn't just asking, can he play for us? They're asking, can this guy save our season and sell jerseys in the same week? That's why they keep calling. That's why they keep begging. And that's why Cleveland, of all franchises, just became the gatekeeper to everyone else's dreams. Let's be blunt. The Cleveland Browns have no business acting this smug. This is the same franchise that turned quarterback misery into an art form. Decades of false messiahs, waste. Draft picks and jerseys filled with names of failed QBs longer than some phone books. And yet here we are. The one time the NFL is desperate for a quarterback locked inside their building, Cleveland suddenly acting like they've mastered the game of poker. Staring down the frenzy. Right now, GMs around the league aren't just calling, they're begging. The Bengals, Rams, Dolphins, Colts, even dark horse teams in the background are circling Cleveland's phone lines. Draft picks? On the table. Players? On the table. Future flexibility? On the table. And what's Cleveland's response? A cold, dismissive no. No matter the offer, no matter how sweet the deal looks, They're brushing teams off with a smug kind of arrogance that makes the rest of the league lose its mind. It's not just refusal, it's pride. The fear of letting go. Why so stubborn? Because if the Browns let Shedeur Sanders out the door and he succeeds somewhere else, that failure would live on their resume forever. Cleveland knows what happens when teams give away golden tickets. Joe Montana, traded. Brett Favre, traded. Steve Young, traded. In every case, those moves haunt the teams for decades. And if Shedeur pops off in Cincinnati, or Miami, or Los Angeles, Browns management instantly becomes the latest NFL punchline, and Cleveland doesn't want another punchline. The brand they can't replace. Here's where things go deeper than box scores. Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback. He's the son of prime time. He's a name that still draws ESPN segments without even being active on Sundays. He has charisma. He has pedigree. And he has a built-in audience that other rookies simply don't bring. That's why Cleveland refuses to move. Even if Shedeur isn't playing, his presence has value. Ticket sales, jersey sales, media attention. For a fan base starving for relevance, Sanders buys the Browns' legitimacy they can't fake. Whether or not he ever sees the field, he gives them something. God, no amount of journeyman filler QBs could. So when other teams line up waving offers, Cleveland doesn't see a fifth-round flyer they could cash in. They see a rare brand asset, and letting go of that scares them more than hoarding him angers the league. The smug development answer. Of course, from Coach Kevin Stefanski, you'll hear the stock soundbite. He's developing. That's coach speak for, we don't actually know when or how to use him. But we also don't want to admit he's sitting idle as our third stringer. It's safe, it's vague, and it keeps the flames off them for another week. But Browns fans aren't buying it anymore. Development? How do you develop someone with no reps, not even on scout team? How do you market patience while lining up Joe Flacco, age 40+, as a game day option? It's a contradiction Cleveland can't explain. But their refusal to trade Sanders hints that behind closed doors, they know they're holding a live wire. Protecting hope at all costs, the Browns don't care how loud the rest of the NFL shouts. They don't care if Miami dangles picks, if Cincinnati flashes stars, or if desperate teams start panic spending for their future. They're digging in, because Sanders represents something Cleveland hasn't had in generations: hope. Maybe it's misguided. Maybe it's stubborn. Maybe it's dumb luck disguised as strategy. But for the first time in decades, the Browns actually have leverage, and they're not letting go. You can talk stats, you can talk mechanics, you can argue scouting reports all day long. But the truth about Shedeur Sanders isn't sitting in some spreadsheet. It's sitting in how people feel about him. Because even without starting, even without active snaps, Shedeur has already turned himself into something bigger than just a quarterback prospect. He's a symbol of hope, of culture, and of change, a reputation that arrives before he does. Think about it. At Jackson State, Sanders steps on campus, and instantly the national spotlight floods a program that mainstream media completely ignored. Suddenly, not only were they relevant, ESPN couldn't get enough. Then, Sanders transfers with Deion to Colorado. Overnight, a program known more as a punchline than a powerhouse becomes the talk of college football. Prime and Shedeur made them must-watch television. Sanders doesn't walk into programs quietly. He flips them. His reputation arrives before he does. And that's exactly why Cleveland's hesitant to let him go. Because whether he's wearing a helmet or just standing on the sideline, people pay attention when Shedeur Sanders is in the building. More than a quarterback. Quarterbacks are supposed to throw touchdowns and orchestrate drives. Sanders can do that. But what makes him dangerous is that he brings more. He's a storyline. He's a draw. He is already a household name, even for fans who couldn't tell you the name of Cleveland's WR2. And when you combine that natural star power with his performance flashes, you don't just get a QB. You get a quarterback who carries the aura of a brand. And in 2024, a quarterback who doubles as a brand icon is more valuable than a dozen decent roster fillers. The off-the-field impact. Here's the piece casual fans may not realize. Sanders has already shown he's more than talk off the field too. Remember that devastating apartment fire at Rainbow Terrace? Sanders didn't sit back as just another rookie. He quietly joined in the community effort, helping, encouraging, showing up when others didn't need to. For most rookies, off-the-field headlines are about contracts or appearances. Sanders is already connecting, already giving, already acting like a leader. That earns respect. That builds goodwill, and that's why people feel he's destined for bigger things. It's one thing to hype a player for what he might do. It's another when you see glimpses of his maturity and leadership long before he earns a single start. Cleveland's cultural reset button. Let's not sugarcoat it. The Cleveland Browns are one of the NFL's most snake-bitten franchises. The drive, the fumble, jersey after jersey, with dozens of QB names scrawled like a cruel obituary list. The city has lived on football heartbreak for decades, and that's where Sanders' value skyrockets. He represents something the Browns haven't had in years, a cultural reset. A young, dynamic quarterback tied to one of the most famous families in football. Someone who could walk into the locker room and immediately shift the energy. Someone who makes even non-Browns fans curious to tune in. This is why local fans already buzz about him like he's the savior. He isn't just an arm on the bench. He's the fresh page in the story that's been stuck on a depressing chapter for too long. The Ferrari in the garage. And that's what makes the current situation so maddening to fans and analysts alike. They see Sanders not just as a potentially good player, but as the Browns' one true cultural asset. Their Ferrari, their lottery ticket. Their hope sitting untouched in a garage while journeymen trot out onto the field. You don't lock away a brand this powerful. At least, not if you actually understand what you're holding. But maybe that's the bizarre Browns paradox. For once, they actually know they've landed on something special, but they're too terrified to use it. Bottom line, Shedeur Sanders isn't playing, but he's already winning. He's already claimed more cultural ground as a third stringer than most young quarterbacks ever will as starters. And that's the symbol Cleveland is clinging to. He is bigger than the roster's pecking order. He's proof that sometimes the idea of a player is as powerful as the performance itself. Here's the truth about the NFL. Nothing stays quiet for long. And when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, the silence around his playing time is already being drowned out by an avalanche of noise. Every week he sits in sweatpants while Joe Flacco trots out. Every week, Dylan Gabriel eats up live snaps. And every week, Cleveland trots out development cliches. The pressure doubles. It's not just Browns fans asking questions anymore. It's the entire football world. Media firestorm, ESPN, or scroll through social feeds, and Shedeur's name is everywhere. Analysts aren't just curious, they're agitated. They're asking why a quarterback with Sanders' traits is glued to the bench, while second-rate arms get opportunities across the league. Tony Rizzo on radio, full-on meltdown. Other insiders saying Cleveland is turning Shedeur into nothing more than a marketing prop, a jersey-selling mascot instead of a future quarterback. This isn't fringe talk. These are national voices framing Cleveland as the villain in the league's most preventable drama. That kind of spotlight, it burns hot, and the Browns are starting to feel it. Fans won't let it go. Cleveland fans are used to disappointment. That's basically been the franchise's love language for decades. But this is different. They can live with losses. They can stomach draft busts. They've ridden the QB carousel so much, they're dizzy. But hiding Shedeur Sanders? Pretending he's invisible when the league is begging for him? That digs deeper. It feels personal. Fans see him as the rare symbol of hope they've been waiting on. A cultural reset. Quarterback tied to someone legendary. bringing juice to a cursed franchise. And every week he doesn't play feels like the Browns are deliberately stepping on the fans' excitement. Now add in pressure from other fan bases. Bengals fans tweeting about life without Burrow. Dolphins fans trending hashtags after every Tua interception. Rams fans eyeing Stafford's back like a bomb timer. This isn't just Cleveland's chatter anymore, it's league-wide unrest. Trade deadline drama. And here's the ignition point everyone's circling. November 4th. That's the trade deadline. And right now, NFL insiders are practically giddy about the potential chaos brewing. Because what happens when the Rams come knocking with multiple future picks? What happens when Cincinnati pushes real capital on the table? Or if Miami, in desperation, decides to drop a blockbuster offer? Every Sanders inactive Sunday between now and then only raises the stakes. Each week he sits, his value multiplies. The less he plays, the larger the myth grows. By November, you won't just have a quarterback trade. You'll have a headline nuclear blast. Cleveland knows it, other teams know it, and fans know it. This situation has a countdown clock attached to it. The Ferrari metaphor is now everywhere. It's gotten so absurd that even casual fans use the same tired metaphor. Cleveland bought a Ferrari and decided to use it as a lawn ornament. It's not said with envy anymore. It's pure ridicule. Every throw Shedeur isn't making on the field is one more brick on the mountain of commentary saying Cleveland is out of touch. The Browns have turned him into the story of what isn't happening. And ironically, that story is louder than most current starters' performances. The Browns' bluff is being called. The front office thinks they can sit smug and keep saying, "He's developing. We're patient." But patience has a shelf life. The media is circling harder every week. Fans are restless. Rival franchises are locked in like sharks waiting for blood. And when that deadline looms, the bluff will be tested. If Cleveland keeps him locked up while the world screams, they risk something no front office wants, being the villain and the fool. The team mocked for wasting hope while choking opportunity. But if they cave and finally trade him, they risk watching Sanders pop off somewhere else and having to explain yet again why the brightest light they drafted left without even a shot. And that's the paradox. The more Cleveland refuses, the more the outside world demands action. That pressure is no longer building quietly. It's a public storm. And eventually, storms create cracks. At some point, the circus has to end. At some point, a decision has to be made. Because right now, the Cleveland Browns are hoarding Shedeur Sanders like a winning lottery ticket, and the rest of the NFL is pounding on the door with cash, draft picks, and desperation written all over their faces. But here's the ultimate question. Are the Browns really going to unleash him, or are they too scared to find out the truth? If Cleveland plays him, let's start with the dream scenario. Sanders finally gets real reps. Not garbage time handoffs, not scout team reps against backups. Actual, live, game day snaps. What happens? One of two things. Best case. He looks like the player fans and analysts imagine he is. Sharp, poised, accurate, with all the maturity that comes from carrying primetime DNA and years of handling pressure. Instantly, he sparks the Browns into something new. The fan base rallies around him. The franchise finds its missing identity, and suddenly, Browns quarterback isn't a curse word anymore. Worst case, he stumbles a little, maybe even struggles out of the gate. But even then, at least you finally know. At least you're moving forward with a plan instead of hiding him like a secret no one can use. In both outcomes, the Browns get something they desperately need: clarity. But clarity requires courage. And right now, it's courage Cleveland hasn't shown. If Cleveland trades him, this is where it gets tricky. If the Browns pick up the phone at the trade deadline and finally say yes, they'll be able to demand a ransom. multiple draft picks, a young player, maybe even a haul that looks lopsided in the moment. It could set them up for the future. But here's the problem. If Sanders goes somewhere else, maybe Cincinnati, maybe Los Angeles, maybe Miami, and develops into the star most believe he can be, Cleveland will never live it down. Not for a season, not for a decade, not ever. The moment that happens, the Browns go from maybe smart for hoarding him, franchise that let Deion Sanders' son walk without ever giving him a shot. They'll be the punchline of sports talk shows for years. And considering their history with quarterbacks, they can't afford that stain on their legacy. If Cleveland does nothing, and here's the nightmare scenario, things stay the same. Sanders stagnates on the bench. Flacco gets rolled out as the veteran option. Gabriel eats up meaningless snaps. And Cleveland keeps repeating the same line. He's developing. Meanwhile, fans grow restless. The media grows louder. Other teams keep stacking offers. And Sanders himself becomes more symbol than player. That's the equivalent of parking a Ferrari in your garage and never once turning the key, while the entire neighborhood shakes their heads asking why you even bought it in the first place. At some point, doing nothing becomes just as damaging as playing or trading him. A decision that shapes more than football. This isn't just about football anymore. It's about identity. Jackson State had no national relevance. Shedeur arrives and they're a story. Colorado was mocked. Shedeur arrives and they're primetime TV. Now Cleveland, the Browns aren't just fighting for wins. They're fighting for credibility. They've been the league's punching bag for decades. They've been the meme team, the cursed franchise, the factory of sadness. And yet, by accident, they ended up with a quarterback who could flip that script in one afternoon. That's why this decision looms so heavy. Play him, trade him, or keep hiding him. No matter what they choose, it will define how history remembers this chapter for the Browns. The ultimate question. So here it is. Will Cleveland be remembered as the franchise that finally got it right? The ones that trusted patience, brought Sanders into the spotlight, and rewrote their identity with a cultural reset? Or will they be remembered as the fools who let fear win? The clowns who traded away the spark of hope, or worse, buried him so deep he never got the shot he deserved? The answer isn't in press conferences or scout team clips. It's in what Cleveland does next. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback anymore. He's a movement. He's the storyline. The entire NFL is watching. And sooner or later, the Browns will no longer have the option to stay silent. They'll either unleash him or lose him. And when that day comes, the entire league will be ready to say, "We told you so." Every once in a while, a story comes along that isn't really about stats, numbers, or box scores. It's about symbolism. It's about perception. And it's about what the entire NFL feels in their gut. Shedeur Sanders is one of those stories. Right now, he hasn't started a single NFL game. He hasn't walked onto the field in front of a packed stadium as QB1. He hasn't unleashed a Heisman-level performance under the bright lights of Sunday Night Football. And yet, somehow, the league is circling him like sharks. The media can't stop saying his name. Fans are demanding answers. And the Browns? They're sitting there with folded arms, acting like they're playing chess while everyone else is still losing at checkers. The Browns' contradiction. Here's the contradiction that keeps people glued to this saga. On one hand, Cleveland refuses to play him. Every soundbite is the same. He's developing, while Joe Flacco edges closer to 41 and Dillon Gabriel racks up reps that no one's excited about. On the other hand, they won't trade him either. Not to Cincinnati, not to Miami, not to the Rams. Every call comes in, and every time, the answer is a smug no. That contradiction is what turns Sanders into more than a quarterback prospect. He's become a hostage of potential. The Browns have him locked away, and the entire league is losing its mind trying to pull him loose. This isn't just about football performance anymore. It's about control. A Ferrari under a tarp. Think about it this way. Sanders represents the rarest thing in the NFL. Hope, electricity, and relevance baked into one player. He's got pedigree. He's got name power. He's got leadership qualities beyond his years. And yet, Cleveland treats him like a Ferrari hidden under a tarp in the garage, while the whole neighborhood begs them to take it for a spin. Every week he doesn't play, his legend grows. Every time the Browns keep him inactive, his popularity multiplies. Every team that loses their quarterback to injury instantly scans the Browns' depth chart and circles one name: Shedeur Sanders. It's become almost laughable. A third-string rookie quarterback is easily the most talked-about player on Cleveland's roster. The Browns' fear and the NFL's reality. The reason is simple. The Browns are terrified. If they play Sanders and he struggles, the myth is gone. If they trade him and he blossoms somewhere else, they'll never live it down. If they keep him in purgatory, fans get angrier, media gets louder, and rival GMs get bolder. There's no easy road here. That's the Browns' problem. But it's also why this story has exploded out of Cleveland and into the national conversation. The NFL runs on drama, and Shedeur Sanders is the league's latest, greatest soap opera. November 4th, the circle on the calendar. That's why everyone is pointing toward one date: November 4th, the trade deadline. By then, some contending team will be in full panic mode. A franchise quarterback will go down, or a playoff run will start crumbling under pressure. When that happens, the calls will get louder, the offers will stack higher, and Cleveland will face a decision they can't dodge forever: unleash him or Cass. Either choice flips the NFL, a movement bigger than a depth chart. But here's what makes this conclusion different than your typical NFL trade rumor. Sanders isn't just a quarterback waiting for his shot. Sanders is a movement. He flipped Jackson State into a story bigger than their stadium. He dragged Colorado into national headlines overnight. And now, without even playing a snap, he's made the Cleveland Browns, yes, those Browns, one of the most talked about franchises in the league. That doesn't happen by accident. That doesn't happen with development guys. That only happens with a player bigger than the role he's been given. Final thought. So here's the bottom line. Whether he stays locked behind clipboard duty in Cleveland, whether he's unleashed as the spark fans demand, or whether he's traded in a blockbuster that shakes the league, one reality isn't changing. Shedeur Sanders is no longer just a quarterback. He's leverage. He's hope. He's a brand. He's the story every fan, every analyst, and every franchise is waiting to see unfold. And when the Browns finally make their move, whether it's genius or another entry in their long list of disasters, they won't just be choosing the fate of one rookie quarterback. They'll be choosing between repeating their history or rewriting it forever. And that's the question for you. Are the Browns sitting on the savior they've craved for generations? Or the greatest wasted opportunity since they passed on Patrick Mahomes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button if you're tired of seeing Shedeur locked away. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what could be the most wild QB story of this season.